that yes, they are giving you the green roof, but when you look at what it is, it doesn't seem to be sufficient. Now, again, would we be in a position to be able to say you need to have this larger? The officer says that in order to achieve what the biodiversity staff want, it is sufficient. So that's the question. Is it sufficient or does it need to be bigger?
Chris, there you go. Answer that.
For what it's achieving, I think it is sufficient. I think it's just to be clear that it is all applications that we now deal with have to address biodiversity enhancement. So sometimes that is as simple on a new dwelling as a artificial bird box or a bat brick or something like that on the development, but it's something that all developments have to achieve. Developers themselves have targets. They have to achieve certain ratings in terms of the energy efficiency of their building to get grant funding and all this kind of stuff. And it may well be that providing a green roof ticks some boxes on their side as well. As I think Laura made clear, this will provide a habitat. It's not in lieu of the impact it's having on the sink, but in combination with the SARBS features in that location and the green roof, all of that is all very well, but the main element in terms of biodiversity is this long-term management and maintenance of that sink, which as I think, and using Catherine's words, is an exemplar of what can be done on a site, and I think that would significantly improve the site for the wider community going forward.
Thank you. If you just bear with me again, Chair. The noise impact. The local member said 80 decibels. I wanted to check with officers the noise that would be heard in the residential house that is the closest. Is this taking into account the acoustic barrier that will be put in according to the plan? And is it going to be 80 decibels at that location? Thank you.
So there are conditions on there. There's 4 separate conditions in relation to noise, which I think Catherine pointed out in her report. Yep. There are further details to be submitted. There's also a noise management plan that will be submitted, and there's a condition that actually says that the sound rating level from the development shall not exceed background sound level during day or night at the nearest noise sensitive properties. So that would ensure that there is no increase in noise above and beyond what they currently deal with. So through all of those conditions, I suppose you can see it as like through each of those steps, there's control to ensure that there's an assessment all the way through. They've currently highlighted, I think, acoustic barriers and things which they think will address some of the issues, but there's further information regarding the technicality or the technical details and specifications of the equipment that they're putting in, which they're yet to be able to provide, and that will be provided and those details addressed under those conditions. But notwithstanding that, there's obviously that 4th condition, that is if there is a justified noise complaint. So if our officers go out there, it's not just whether or not they think it's a statutory nuisance issue, but if they go out and they're not in compliance with the conditions, there's a 4th condition that would mean that there's a process to go through then in which they would have to submit details to address that issue.
Okay, thank you for that. I'd just like to make one more comment regarding the parking. We are betwixt and between at the moment. We really need to reduce people's travel plans to go by car, but until they do, it will come. I think the local members are correct. I have a similar situation with a factory in my ward where everybody comes by car and it does cause problems. We do have redress and we do move them along. However, we need to win the hearts and minds of the individuals themselves. And as a planning committee, we did sign up to the climate emergency, and every little helps, to quote a supermarket. And when we do these things, little by little, through the planning applications, I think we might be getting our message through. But I do understand the local members' concerns. However, I think what the officers have recommended would not contravene what we signed up to last week. So it's tough. It's a really difficult decision for planning applications. So thank you for bearing with me.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Patterson. And saying that, if we were to submit the amendment where they resubmit a travel plan in 12 months' time, we can actually have active travel as part of that to reduce the carbon footprint. I'm really running out of
application. Are members considering the condition that there's going to be no further development and reserve the sink that's left behind?
I've got a couple more questions first, and let you come in with that. Okay. Councillor Carl Jordan, your hands popped up and down a few times. So you left a message in the chat. Did you want to ask a question?
Sorry, Chris, I don't know what's happening, if it's coming on and off. No, I say my question in the chat has been answered.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Ken Phillips, then Councillor Keogh. Sorry, I got your name there. Councillor Keogh next. Sorry, Councillor Phillips, come to you in a minute. Councillor Keogh.
Thank you. Just to clear up for the members who don't know Talbot, like we know Aberafan very, very well. And showing my age here now, I can remember a time when housing ended at Farm Drive and there was nothing beyond it on the estate. So that's how far back my memory goes. At the end of Farm Drive was the farm owned by the Reeses. I know because I rode horses down there as a youngster. Now, the site we're talking about, the site itself, back in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, a decision was taken by the Avon Borough Council is to reclaim that land, and they went into an agreement with British Steel at the time, because they changed the name so often. And what happened is they purchased 300 to 500,000 tonne of blast furnace slag. Now, blast furnace slag was chosen because it's inert, it's non-reactive. So you'll find that on that site down there is a 3 to 5 metre depth of blast furnace slag, and on top is the soil. For over 50 years, what has happened is that nature has reclaimed part of it. So, that's how the site was redeveloped. And when we say it was changed, I hope you understand anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keogh. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on that issue of Greenfield versus Brownfield site, given that we'd be considering them slightly differently. And the definition I used, by the way, was from Planning Policy Wales, so presumably would be the correct one to apply. What I wanted to clarify is whether the question of the land being Greenfield and Brownfield or Brownfield has previously been defined such that it is outside the auspices of our decision today, or whether that decision itself forms part of our decision-making process. Is it actually defined somewhere that this is a brownfield site in a way that we must follow, or is it something we should consider as part of our considerations? Thank you.
Chris and Nicola, the hands up there.
Yes, Chair. No, I don't think it makes it. I mean, in terms of the site, it's within settlement limits, as pointed out in Catherine's presentation. It's adjoining other industrial commercial development. It's bounded on all sides by other forms of development. So in terms of whether or not there's an argument whether it's greenfield or brownfield or previously developed land or previously prepared land for development, all of the impacts in terms of this development that are relevant to planning have been addressed within the report. So you will see that there is an impact from the development. The development will result in a loss of a percentage of the sink, but the compensation that's being provided in terms of the long-term management and the overarching socio-economic benefits from retaining this employment, jobs, and spin-off development in the future outweighs all of those issues. So in terms of whether or not someone considers it as Greenfield or someone considers it Brownfield, in terms of its position within our local development plan, it remains the same.
Nicola, do you want to tell that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Chris has obviously summed up a lot of the issues there. I think what we have to remember is the importance of it being within the settlement limit. There is a presumption in favour of development within the settlement limits as defined in the LDP, unless other material considerations dictate otherwise. Now, your officers have given you advice at length based on their professional experience that there will be no impact in terms of highway safety. There will be no impact upon residential amenity, and there will actually be an enhancement in terms of economic, socio-economic issues and in terms of biodiversity. It does comply with national policy and it does comply with local planning policy. Hence the recommendation from your officers that the application should be approved subject to a list of conditions which are presented within the officer's report. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, there was just clarification. Do you want clarification on something, Councillor Grimshaw? No, that's okay. Okay.
Sorry, Chair. I think earlier Councillor Grimshaw talked about a condition being imposed to prevent development on the remainder of the site. I think we've previously clarified that the 50-year management plan for the remainder of that site will effectively secure that objective. Thank you, Chair.
I would just push committee members to add it as an additional condition, just to give us more legal basis to go on if it's contradicted.
Chris, any advice that, because it'd have to come back to the planning either way, wouldn't it? Any kind of development.
Yes, I mean, ultimately, they would not be able to do anything that's contrary to the management plan, or they'd be in breach of those conditions. So there's enforcement that can take place, and any development requires planning permission. So if they came in and wanted to build a big car park on it or extend their building, we would be going through all this process again under that application. And obviously, if you think about it, if they've done 5-10 years of ongoing biodiversity management, and as set out by the biodiversity officer and Catherine earlier, this site becomes an exemplar for biodiversity and mosaic habitat for the area, if not the area for Neath Talbot as a whole, then it's completely contrary to their aspirations to redevelop it. So I think that it would be something that would be beyond the remit of this application, and it's something that would have to be considered separately as a separate application. But I think just for the fact that we've got a management plan in place prevents them from doing it, which means that that condition is not necessary. So when you have to put conditions on, you have to make sure they meet the tests, and that would not meet the tests because development in itself would require a planning application, which would have to be assessed.
Hey, thank you, Chris. There's no more questions there. So refer the recommendation on page 68. Sorry. Councillor Patterson, go on.
Thank you, Chair. It was mentioned earlier that Chris would be quite happy to add to make an amendment that the travel plan come back. So I would be happy to propose if Chris were to do the wording.
Okay, I've got that. I've actually got the wording. Yeah, if that's okay. If Councillor Patterson, if you agree, then to propose the amendment to submit a new travel plan in 12 months' time, as highlighted by Chris Davis.
Correct.
Sorry, I know it's been a long day. Is that 12 months during construction or after the starting of the plant? Because that's the key.
12 months from this plan application.
No,
Right,
it would. I think it would. I think what we've got a standard condition that requires the submission of a travel plan, then review. What we would probably do is it would be 12 months from operation, so they would have opportunity to they would assess what's happening with the travel. So, for instance, it's the same that we've done with the biodiversity plan. It's a review in 1 year after first operation, and then a review every 5 years. It would probably be along the same line. So obviously they have an existing travel plan that's been part of the transport assessment, which has been assessed by Highways. We would probably wait and do a 12-month review after first use. and then it will then be reviewed on a basis then probably every 5 years.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So going back, to
Happy with that,
proposing.
that it be 12 months
12
from the
months.
initial use.
Okay. So the recommendation included in that proposal, and there were recommended conditions on page 68. I got a proposer. Have I got a seconder, please? Councillor Keogh, seconder. Okay, Chloe, can you confirm that everyone's been here for the full meeting and how they wish to vote?
Yes, Chair. So I'll be going round asking if you can please say if you've been present for the whole meeting, how you vote on the recommendation with the addition that has just been proposed. So, Councillor Tim Bowen, can you confirm if you've been present for the whole item and how you wish to vote, please?
Yes, I've been present the whole time and I approve the recommendation.
With the addition as well?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Rosalind Davis, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote on the recommendation with the addition?
I've been present for the whole item and I'm voting in favour of the recommendation with the addition.
Thank you. Councillor Cathy James, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote on the recommendation with the addition?
I've been present for the whole item. I'd like to vote in favour of the recommendation and the addition.
Thank you. Chair, I can see you've been present for the whole meeting. Can you please tell me how you wish to vote on the recommendation with the addition?
I wish to vote for the recommendation with the addition.
Thank you. Councillor Jeff Jones, can you confirm you've been present for the whole item and how you wish to vote on the recommendation with the addition?
Yes, I have been present and I vote to approve the recommendation with the addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carl Jordan, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote on the recommendation with the addition?
Yes,
Can you, Councillor Jordan, we're having trouble hearing you in the chamber. Is there any chance you can speak a bit louder?
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me now?
That's much better. Yes, much better.
Okay, yeah. So just to confirm that I've attended the full meeting and in favour of the recommendation with the addition.
Thank you. Councillor Keogh, I can see that you've been present for the whole meeting. Can you please tell me how you wish to vote?
Hard to miss me, isn't it? Yeah, I go with the recommendation and the addition.
Thank you. Councillor Paddison, same to you. I can see you've been present for the whole item. How do you wish to vote?
I wish to vote in favour of my amendment.
Yeah. Problem. Thank you. Councillor Ken Phillips, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I have been present for the whole item and I wish to vote in favour of the recommendation with the addition.
Thank you. And lastly, Councillor Thomas, can you please confirm if you've been present for the whole item and how you wish to vote?
I have been present for the whole item. I would like to vote in favour with the amendment.
Thank you. So that's 10 members in attendance, Chair, and 10 have voted to approve the recommendation with the addition of the condition as stated.
That's passed with the addition stated. Thank you. Now, can we go? Yeah.
Yeah, we can finish that.
Okay. So next agenda is item 7, P 2022-0521, 7 Clary Street. And this application is for approval. Would you like to introduce it, Chris?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just going to share my screen. It's been a long day. Can't remember which buttons to press. Okay. So this is application P 2022-0521 for a change of use of a dwelling into a 5-bedroom house of multiple occupation and a first floor rear extension at 7 Clary Street, Aberavon. So the application is currently a 3-bed, 2-storey residential property. The proposal involves a first floor rear extension. That's the existing elevation, side elevation, and you can see the first floor extension going in here. This will create 2 bedrooms on the ground floor and 3 bedrooms on the first floor, with a total of 5 residents. The proposal is an end of terrace property. You can see on the extract from the location plan here. The property currently has no off-street car parking to serve the existing 3-bedroom property, and will provide 3 off-street car parking spaces within the rear curtilage of the dwelling. In terms of the report, the application has been assessed in relation to the guidelines that we are using currently for assessing HMOs, which we don't have any current planning policy specific to HMO development within Neath Talbot, but as per previous applications, we've addressed the policy that Swansea have implemented as part of their supplementary planning guidance. So we've assessed that within the report. You will see that even if we were to have similar guidance within Neath Talbot, the application would be compliant with the requirements of that policy, as there are currently no other HMO development within 50 metres of the site. That is indicated here, where we've drawn a 50-metre circle around. There are no other HMOs within that area. As I stated, we don't have a current policy, but this is only guidelines that we use to assess whether or not there will be impacts on residential amenity. The application has been called to committee by Councillor Dacey regarding potential impacts on residential amenity and amenity of the area through the introduction of a HMO. We've had no objections in terms of any of our statutory consultees. And as you see, we are recommending that we approve the application subject to the conditions set out within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from members? Councillor Dacey, you'd like to speak on this?
Thank you, Chris. Me again. Yeah. The report says the maximum 5 adults. The plan only shows 1 small toilet and bathroom. This seems inadequate design. It's hardly accommodation for young professionals and reeks of profit herein. Surely there should be more facilities for washing and toiletry. Another concern is the potential of each resident owning a car. While there are 3 spaces on the back of the property, they will lead to more parking on the street, which is already congested. I can guarantee you that, because I almost got killed riding through this morning on a bike where a car turned and almost knocked me off. There will be difficulty parking in Claridge Street itself, and the overspill will affect the neighbouring streets, one of which is Pendarvis Terrace, which is home to Sanfies Primary School and the ICC childcare facility. Refuse collection will be put under further pressure in an already difficult area for refuse and recycling. The streets and lanes are extremely tight, and there's always access issues. Adding more recycling refuse bins will have an adverse effect on the service. The 100-year-old streets are not designed for modern-day vehicles, and our refuse and recycled vehicles are too large to access the lanes. The streets are laden with parked cars. It's an issue, safety issue regarding access for emergency services. Fire tenders and ambulances have had difficulty in the past accessing properties. The site of the potential HMO is also at the foot of a busy bridge spanning the Port Talbot Periphery Road, the Avon Way, for those who know it locally. It's in between the 2 cycle paths. These walkway cycle paths are extremely busy at school start and finish times. The extra traffic and parking will hinder these paths and be a potential hazard to pupils and school staff alike. I know it's an active travel route, but our active travel route is in a deplorable fragmenting condition. I know because I use it most days. Hopefully this will be addressed in our term of office, but it's not fit for purpose as it stands. Port Talbot, or Aberafan specifically, is not a university town crying out for student accommodation. The local hospital has vacancies in its residential buildings, so any argument for this type of accommodation does not wash with the residents. There are currently 39 HMOs in the Neath Port Talbot area, and there are 34 wards in the borough. So on average, of just over 1 per ward, this will be Aberafan's 5th HMO. We have there been Olive Street, Glyn Street, Bevan Street and Mount View Terrace, all of which have caused antisocial behaviour, fly tipping, noise issues. Indeed, armed police were recently called to an HMO in Olive Street. This has caused local residents consternation, untold stress, and worry leading to health concerns. Surely we have a duty of care to these residents who pay one of the highest council tax in Wales. I have had many of the residents flag up concerns and implore the committee to refuse this application for the betterment of the community. I understand we need one-bedroom apartments, but they should be purpose-built on new sites alongside 2, 3 and 4-bedroom houses, not crammed into an area that was designed and built over 100 years ago. One of the previous mayors and current councillor once stated, and I'm paraphrasing, a small nuclear device should be dropped in Aberafan and all the troubles will go away. Not as drastic an action, nonetheless as effective has been the negligent treatment of the ward over the last 30 years. It has had little or no development of which to speak. We have seen the children's park systematically closed, youth clubs ceasing to operate, sports facilities.
Councillor Dacey, you've gone off subject a bit. This is just about the plan application in front of us today, okay?
All right, okay. So where do I start now? Okay then. Right, this I think is irrelevant. All the people who have right, hang on, right. HMOs, and it's a high rental place in Fairfield and Aberafan, and a lot of the people that own the properties are not living and not from the area. Go on then, sorry. All right, okay. Right, so when I planning to apply for, I went to search for the policy from Neath Talbot regarding HMOs. To my surprise, there was no such policy. There's an obvious historical oversight regarding these unpopular developments. As a matter of urgency, this should be addressed. The fact that these developments are not welcomed by most people where they already exist. The notification of development was sent only to the immediate property attached to the house that was attached to the potential HMO. This should be expanded, in my opinion, to at least the street or 10 properties nearest. It was only the reaction of the neighbour that flagged up the development to others, and should be a case of a dissemination of information broadened. There are issues of neighbouring homes depreciated value. Do we consider compensation to affected houses? Do we ask neighbours of HMOs to pay less council tax? Once these HMOs are up and running, we expect the neighbours to police the people who live in them. Inevitably, there are occupants who have historical issues from living elsewhere. The current HMOs in Aberafan area have caused all types of, as I said, antisocial behaviour. When occupants leave, we are dumping the furniture in the lanes and the streets. The owners and landlords are often absent. People living in London who have no connection to the area and have difficulty getting hold of them when there's a problem. The neighbours living in Clara Street and other vicinities should have their rights and concerns properly aired and considered in this case. One resident suffering anxiety and missing work because of the stress this is causing him. He has been in constant contact and I feel for the situation of mental anguish. Nearly finished, sorry. Yes. The landlord has already shown the unscrupulous attitude by tearing down the council notification that was posted on a nearby fence. He was caught in the act on camera. If this is his attitude, I have my doubts about the potential residents that he'll have in there, and they will be vetted. So I think we'll end up with undesirable occupants and have experienced difficulties living elsewhere. So I implore you to reject this planning application, to create an HMO policy and to expand the notification process of future planning applications so that properties within, say, the 50 metres that you showed earlier be contacted and consider values falling and compensate neighbours accordingly. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Dace, obviously, I understand you, Councillor, and a lot of what you covered there aren't planning considerations. So, Chris, if you just cover the planning considerations.
Yeah,
and,
I'll try and
also
cover
just touch base on the HMO policy as well. And
yeah.
That. Thank you.
So I think I got most of it down. As you're aware, that the local authority does not have a specific HMO policy. At the time of the inception of the local development plan, there was no issue in the area that justified a specific policy for HMOs. So for clarity for members, to implement a policy in the plan or have a supplementary planning guidance that would restrict people's opportunities to develop, because this is just a type of housing, we would have to have an evidence base to justify that harm and why we're implementing that policy in this case. So what you'll see from Swansea, for example, is they've got a specific policy that targets specific areas because they have identified an issue with social cohesion and antisocial behaviour, etc., in those areas. So they are predominantly in Swansea from student accommodation in the uplands, for example. So by evidencing the harm, they then had justification to implement policies within their plan for that. As part of the local development plan review, there's opportunity now to look at what new policies the local authority may wish to put in, and those may not be blanket policies that cover all of Neath Talbot. They may again be targeted to specific areas where there is harm, and that's been identified. Now, in this case, as you see from the report, there are no other, even if we had that policy in place now, this would still be fully policy compliant because there are no other HMOs in that area. So it would still comply if we were to adopt a policy very similar to Swansea. In terms of the other issues raised, obviously a HMO is a type of residential accommodation. It's not apartments or flats. It's a different type of residential accommodation. And as an authority, we have to ensure that we're providing accommodation for all types of people and all types of accommodation, from the cheapest to the most expensive. And we then cannot, under planning, consider the occupiers of those properties, and we cannot imply that all occupiers of any HMO will automatically cause problems in terms of antisocial behaviour issue or any other issue that they'd have on residential amenity of adjoining properties. So in terms of the HMO, we can only look at it as in it's a type of residential use within a residential area. In relation to your comment about standards of accommodation, those aren't dealt with under planning. That's straying into other people's legislation. So obviously, if this is something that requires to be licensed, or if they are through Rent Smart Wales, etc., there are certain things that they have to comply with. There's building regulation standards, there's environmental health standards, and those are beyond the control of planning. So obviously, we will look at what they're providing in terms of the type of accommodation, but whether they've got one bathroom or two bathrooms to serve those people is beyond our remit in terms of what we're looking at today. Turning to car parking, the property is currently a 3-bed house. It has no off-street car parking at all. The maximum number of car parking spaces we can ask for that property is 3. And this proposal will provide a 5-bedroom HMO with the maximum amount of car parking, which is 3 spaces. As Councillor Dacey pointed out, it's opposite the footbridge that provides access to the opposite side of the PDR. It's next to sustainable transport in terms of cycle and walking routes, and it's close to other services and amenities. That is why you get the discrepancy in terms of the numbers of HMOs in certain wards and certain areas compared to the comparison of there's 36 wards, there's more, there should be one in each borough, one in each ward, etc., etc. This type of smaller development in terms of 1 and 2 bed units, HMO type development, is normally located in more sustainable, densely populated areas than in rural communities, because that's where people have potentially not have access to their own transport, where they need to be able to get to places, walking and cycling, or bus routes, trains, etc. But in terms of the antisocial behaviour issue, that is obviously, there are other legislation that is in place to deal with that in terms of environmental health and other elements. And I think the only other issue you raised that probably we need to touch on is the consultation. Obviously, we have a consultation procedure that we follow quite strictly. We don't stray from it. We consult adjoining properties that are physically attached or adjoining the application site edge red. We do not consult wider. Where it's necessary, we do site notices. In this case, a site notice was also placed on site. When we were made aware that that site notice has been taken down, a new site notice went back up on site. Again, clearly that raised residents' concerns, and those have obviously come into us and the local member regarding the consultation responses. So, but in terms of our consultation procedures, we've followed the guidelines that we use for all planning applications in relation to this, and we don't stray from those, because that's when we get into trouble if we start consulting different people on different types of applications. I think that probably addresses it all. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Keogh.
It's basically to address what was said earlier on. The thing is that passions run high when it comes to HMOs, especially in places where you grew up. And in Welsh, I would say, o bach yn bach, ac Aberafan erioed, which means an Aberafan boy always. And the thing is that HMOs impassion people. Now, some years back, I made a rather unfortunate comment in which the Western Mail was sitting behind me. And that actually made the Mail on Sunday and the Sunday Times. It's something I regret, but I do not regret the intention of it, because they are a scourge. Make no bones about it, they are a scourge. Where this house is going, I was born 2 streets away from it, and I know how small those houses are. The box room in which I slept, and I mean a box room, couldn't even get a wardrobe in there, just about a bed. So that's the point we're trying to make. And we, through the LDP and the review of the LDP, have to put something in place to restrict or to limit or to make it tougher for these people to apply for HMO. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keogh. I myself are no strangers to HMOs. I've been swapped spaces with Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair.
But in the past, as I say, those HMO applications have gone through because that's planning law, and that's what we heard today, is to follow planning law. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, exactly the point I was going to make. Until the Welsh Government say that an HMO is not a legal use of land, then we have to abide by the fact that it is a legal use of land. We might not want to at times. Councillor Dacey's put some points through which residents, and Chair, you've had residents as the same. However, as a planning committee, we have to have planning reasons to object to an HMO. I can see none on this application. The argument that 2 extra residents in a house going like from a 3-bedroom, well, you could have 5 or 7 people maybe. There's going to be 5 HMO, 5 units in this. I don't think that that's going to add difficulty to the collection of refuse, to be honest with you. The parking, it's been mentioned, it's a betterment, because 3 cars are not going to be on the road. That's the most we can ask for per application. I sympathise with residents, but we cannot predict what the character of anybody letting a room in an HMO will be. We have to assume that they will be good tenants. We cannot say from the outset, and I know you've made the point, we're not a university town, and I'll take that on board. However, during the pandemic, lots of breakups of relationships happened, and HMOs tend to be the ones that residents go to if they don't fit into any other category. So if they're not going to get a room on a registered landlord, if they haven't got any children that they need to look after. But nonetheless, these people need somewhere to lay their head and call home. So I will be voting in favour of the recommendation on this one, Chair. I just feel that sometimes the people that want it stopped, don't understand the restrictions maybe that the planning committee are under. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Councillor Patterson. You're right there. You want to come back, Councillor Daisy?
Yeah, I understand that, but historically in the area with the HMOs we've had loads of antisocial behaviour. It hasn't been young professionals, it hasn't been university people. It's been people who have been thrown out of other areas, for want of a better word, and landed in Aberafan. Now, the state, the lane, the streets, the rubbish is thrown out from them when they go is absolutely deplorable. And I can understand that the residents are up in arms. They are genuinely up in arms about this situation.
Chris, do you want to respond to that? Also,
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to mention the environmental health report as well.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, we've consulted environmental health on this, and they've offered no objection in terms of the principle of what they do. And I understand that the landlord has already engaged with them in terms of the process, in terms of conversion and what he needs to do to achieve their requirements. I think that it's important for all members, and it's one of the things that we are looking at in terms of a potential training session, or it might come out of as part of the replacement development plan process that you should all be engaging with, is ensuring that you are providing factual evidence of this, of these issues, and that you should be advising all of your residents to not just complain to you, but to complain to the relevant sections of the authority. And that would probably form part of our training, is to advise members on who they should go to register complaints regarding certain issues. Because, for example, where we've previously had concerns from the number of HMOs in an area, when we look at our systems, there's been no objection, no complaints made to environmental health, or there's no complaints made to planning. So there's no evidence to back up any justification for us to refuse any further applications. Now, in this case, as I've said, it would be fully policy compliant if we were to impose a policy similar to what Swansea have got in place. But and I think that we have to be careful, as Councillor Patterson as inferred, is to kind of mark every HMO as an unacceptable development. There is a place for HMOs within our housing needs, and we will still always get HMOs. It's just a point where they reach a level that affects social cohesion and affects communities. And I think, and that is what you need to explore through the local development plan review process. But in terms of this application today, we haven't heard anything that I think would change our recommendation on this case. And I would obviously just reiterate that we're still recommending approval subject to the conditions that we've got imposed, which ensure the car parking is put in place and retained.
Thank you, Chris. See no other indications. So the recommendation starts on page 91. Sorry. Approval subject to the conditions within the report. Could I have a proposal and a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Seconder. And Councillor Thomas, thank you. Chloe, you could please ask each member if they've been present for the whole item and how they wish to vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Tim Bowen, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, I've been present for the whole and I object against the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rosalind Davis, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I've been present for the whole item and I'm voting in favour of the recommendation. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. Councillor Cathy James, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I've been present for the whole item and I'm voting in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. I can see you've been present for the whole meeting. How do you wish to vote?
I wish to vote for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Jeff Jones, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, I have been present and I vote for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Carl Jordan, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, I've been present throughout the planning meeting and I'm voting against the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Keogh, I can see you've been present for the whole item. How do you wish to vote?
I will be voting in for.
Thank you. Councillor Paddison, I can see you've been present for the whole item. How do you wish to vote?
For the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ken Phillips, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I have been present for the whole item and I'm voting for the recommendation.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Sarah Thomas, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I have been present for the whole item and I am voting for the recommendation.
Thank you. That recommendation has been approved because we've had 2 people vote against and the rest of the committee voting for. Thanks, Chair.
Recommendation is passed then. Okay, moving on to the next item. Section B, matters for information agendas item 8, 9 and 10. We note the appeals determined, the appeals received and the delegated decisions contained within this report. Agenda item 11, urgent items. I have no urgent items. Yes, sorry, Chloe, would like to come in a minute.
It's not to do with urgent items, Chair, but it's just to note that planning committee members were invited to attend the social services committee, which is starting in approximately 10 minutes time. That meeting's been moved to the conference rooms if you're joining in person, which is on the lower floor near where the licensing department is. We can take you there, or you can join via the Teams link. It has a relevance to planning committee as it's the rapid rehousing report being considered. So yep, if there's nothing else, Chair, so that concludes the meeting. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, hwyl.
Thank you.